I was 32 the day they came back, but I still felt like the 17-year-old kid they'd left behind, bitter, confused, and clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, I had misunderstood everything. That maybe I was the one being dramatic. But when my mother stood on the other side of the intercom at my gated driveway, smiling like a decade hadn't passed in complete silence, that hope died quietly. She tilted her head like she was posing for a Christmas card photo and said, "We always knew you'd make it big, Jonah. We're so proud." I should have felt something. Relief, anger, closure. But all I felt was cold. And when I opened the door, looked her in the eyes, and said, "You're 5 years too late," I saw something flicker behind that smile. Surprise? Guilt? No, it was disappointment. And that was when I knew. This wasn't about love. It never had been. Let me rewind. My name's Jonah, and I'm 32 now. I grew up in a small town that was the kind of place where people didn't lock their doors and the diner waitress knew your order before you sat down. My family. On paper, we looked picture perfect. My dad was a contractor who ran a decent business fixing roofs and remodeling kitchens. My mom was a stay-at-home mom who always had a coupon book and 1,000 unsolicited opinions about other people's parenting. I was the middle child. My older sister, Emily, was the golden one, straight A's, choir solos, prom queen. My younger brother, Matt, was the baby, the accident everyone pretended was a blessing. Me? I was the placeholder, the one who took the leftovers and blended into the background. Not rebellious enough to be the problem child, not exceptional enough to be the favorite. Just there. I used to think the neglect was unintentional, that they were busy, distracted, or just old-fashioned in how they expressed love. But things changed when I turned 15 and got a partial scholarship to a summer STEM camp at a university 2 states over. I remember the moment I got the acceptance email. I ran downstairs, waving my laptop like I'd won the lottery, breathless with excitement. My mom didn't even look up from the coupons she was clipping. My dad grunted from behind the newspaper. Emily rolled her eyes and said, "Wow, nerd camp. Sounds like a real party." And Matt, who was only 10 then, just asked if I was still going to help him beat the water temple in Zelda. No congratulations. No pride. No recognition. I brushed it off, thinking maybe they just didn't get it. I packed my things that summer, scraped together enough from a part-time job to cover the travel expenses, and got a ride from a friend's parent. I didn't hear from my family once the whole 6 weeks I was gone. Not a call. Not a message. Not even a "hope you're doing okay." When I came back, sunburned and beaming with stories about robotics and programming and the professors who'd told me I had real talent, I found out Emily had crashed my bike and blamed me for leaving it in the garage like a moron. My parents made me apologize to her. That was the first real crack in the foundation. By the time I was 18, I had a plan. I worked after school, saved every dollar, applied for scholarships like my life depended on it, because it did, and got accepted to an engineering program across the country. I remember the night I told my parents. We were eating meatloaf around the same scratched-up kitchen table we'd had since I was 6. I said it calmly, already bracing for the indifference. "I got into Caltech," I said. My mom frowned like I'd just told her I was dropping out to join a band. "That's in California, right?" "Yeah." She sipped her iced tea. "Well, who's going to pay for that?" I explained the scholarship, the grants, the work-study offer. I was proud. I'd done everything on my own. "That's nice," my dad said, folding his napkin. "But we're not paying for any of your flights or extra nonsense. If you want to go, you figure it out." Emily smirked. Already a sophomore at a local college where my parents paid for her dorm and meal plan. Guess that means no more free labor fixing my laptop, huh? I remember staring at my plate, the meatloaf suddenly tasteless. That was the moment I realized I was completely on my own. And for some reason, that realization didn't break me. It focused me. I left that August and never looked back. Over the years, I built a life from the ground up. College was brutal, financially, mentally, emotionally. I was that student who lived off rice and beans, who sold his plasma twice a week just to afford textbooks. But I graduated. I got hired by a startup, then another. I worked insane hours, slept in offices, lived out of suitcases. I learned, adapted, grew. At 27, I co-founded a tech firm that specialized in infrastructure automation. At 29, we were acquired by one of the biggest companies in the field for an amount that felt unreal even as I signed the papers. I won't say the number, But let's just say when I bought my current house, 6 bedrooms, smart everything, gated community, I paid cash. And for 10 years, I didn't hear a word from my family. Not a call, not an email, not a birthday card. I wasn't surprised. After I graduated college, I tried reaching out a few times. I sent a message when I got my first real job. No reply. I sent a Christmas card the year I moved into my first apartment in Seattle. Nothing. I left voicemails on my mom's phone when I heard Matt had gotten into trouble with the law, just asking if he was okay. Silence. Eventually, I got the message. I stopped calling. I deleted their numbers. I told myself I was fine without them. And I was. Mostly. But there's a kind of wound that never fully heals. It just scabs over. You get used to the itch. You learn to ignore it. But when someone rips it open again, it bleeds like it never stopped. So when my gate camera lit up last Thursday morning, and I saw my mother's face on the screen for the first time in 10 years, my whole body went still. I was standing in the kitchen, drinking coffee in my pajamas. My fiancée, Layla, was upstairs, still asleep. My phone buzzed with the alert, and I tapped the app absent-mindedly, expecting a delivery guy, maybe a lost dog. Instead, I saw her. And beside her, my dad. Same mustache, same blank stare. Behind them, 2 unfamiliar suitcases. Like they'd just come back from vacation. Or were planning to stay a while. My heart was pounding in a way I hadn't felt since my final college interview. I tapped the audio button. "Jonah," my mother said brightly, looking straight into the camera like it was a mirror. "Sweetheart, we were just driving through and thought we'd surprise you." She smiled that same smile she used to wear when she was trying to charm church ladies into joining the bake sale committee. "We always knew you'd make it big," she added. "We're so proud." And that was when the dam cracked. Not all the way. Not yet. But enough. I buzzed them in. I watched the gate slowly swing open. I walked to the front door, opened it, and waited. When she stepped forward, arms open like I might hug her, I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You're 5 years too late." Then I stepped aside and let her see who was sitting at the head of my table. She froze. Right there in the doorway, half inside, half out. My mother's plastic smile cracked just a little when her eyes landed on the person seated at the head of the dining table. Layla, with her curly hair pulled into a loose bun and a mug of tea in front of her, didn't look up right away. She was flipping through a folder, barefoot in leggings and one of my old sweatshirts, her presence radiating a kind of effortless calm and quiet authority. When she finally did glance up, her expression was unreadable, pleasant, maybe curious. But there was no warm recognition. No, "oh my goodness" moment. Just a polite nod. That was enough. My dad stepped in behind my mom, slower, saying nothing. He looked around like he was trying to remember the layout of a house he'd never seen before, his eyes trailing over the high ceilings, the clean tile floors, the shelves full of books and tech gear and memories they weren't part of. It was quiet. Too quiet. I let the silence stretch out until it was awkward, almost unbearable. My mom cleared her throat. "So, this is beautiful. You really did well for yourself." Layla stood slowly and walked toward me, slipping her hand into mine. "Hey," she said softly. "Do you want me to step out?" "No," I said immediately. "Stay." We stood like that for a few more seconds, me holding the door open, them hovering like 2 tourists who wandered into the wrong gallery. And then my mom did something I didn't expect. She started crying. Not sobbing. No drama. Just a slow leak of tears, as if she'd suddenly realized how much time had passed, or how much she'd missed. Her voice quivered. "I know it's been a long time," she said, glancing nervously between me and Layla. "But we've been following you. We saw your name on the tech news sites, the interviews, the award thing you won. Jonah, we're just so proud of you." It should have felt good to hear that. Instead, it made my stomach tighten. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because just a few feet away, that little kid inside me was screaming. Where was this pride when I needed it? When I was 15 and scared and alone and sleeping on borrowed couches because no one wanted to send me a plane ticket home for break. Layla gave my hand a squeeze, then let go gently and walked back to the table. My mom's eyes followed her, and then, like a flip switched, the emotion drained from her face. "She seems nice," she said. "Is she your assistant or something?" There it was. The first crack of the old pattern. The passive-aggressive dig. I almost laughed. "She's my fiancée," I said. "She runs her own consulting firm. And no, she's not my assistant." My mom blinked, as if that detail personally offended her. Oh, well, that's interesting. We thought maybe. She stopped herself, then smiled again, as if that erased everything. Anyway, we were hoping to talk. Really talk. As a family. My dad finally spoke. You still got that backyard grill, huh? He asked, gesturing vaguely toward the patio. Bet you could cook up some of that steak you used to like. I stared at him. Steak. That was his contribution. I closed the door. They looked startled. I don't mean I'm not letting you in, I said calmly. I'm just not doing this with the whole neighborhood watching. My mom gave a tight laugh, the kind that people use when they're trying to pretend they're not panicking. Inside, I motioned for them to sit. They hovered for a moment, like they were unsure whether to treat the couch like a museum exhibit, and finally perched stiffly on the edge. I didn't sit. I stood near the kitchen island, arms crossed. What do you want? I asked. My mom's smile faltered again. Just to talk. Reconnect. After 10 years? She looked down at her hands. My dad shifted uncomfortably beside her. You know how life gets, she said. Things got busy. Then awkward. Then we weren't sure if you'd want to hear from us. And then it just felt too late. I shook my head slowly. It was never too late to send a text. An email. A hey, are you alive? Message. You didn't even try. Her voice grew defensive. Jonah, we were trying to respect your space. You cut ties. You stopped calling. You made it clear you didn't want anything to do with us. That's not true, I said. I called. I sent cards. I left voicemails. For 3 years. I watched the realization sink in. Or maybe the discomfort of being caught in a lie. I left the door open, I said. You just didn't walk through it. Silence. Then my dad cleared his throat. Well, maybe we all made mistakes. Point is, we're here now. And we're hoping to fix things. Start fresh. I narrowed my eyes. Something about his tone was too polished. Too rehearsed. Layla spoke up from the table. What made you decide to visit now? My mother turned toward her. Excuse me. I mean, Layla said, still polite. It's been 10 years. I'm just curious. What made this the moment? My dad answered quickly. We've been meaning to. We just didn't know how to reach him. Then Matt told us Jonah moved back east. And we thought, why not just show up? Matt. I felt my jaw tighten. You talked to Matt? Of course, my mom said. He's been living with us since, well, a while now. You know he's been through some rough patches. He's been through rough patches because you babied him through every bad decision he ever made. I snapped before I could stop myself. Her face went cold. That's not fair. No, I said, stepping closer. What's not fair is that when he got arrested for stealing credit cards, you hired a lawyer and told everyone he was framed. When he dropped out of college, you said it was because the school wasn't challenging him enough. When I needed help paying for textbooks, you said I should take more responsibility. My dad stood. That's enough. You're acting like we never cared about you. You didn't. He scoffed. We're your parents. Exactly, I said. You were supposed to show up. But you only ever showed up for Emily and Matt. Every time. My mom stood too, shaking her head. That's not true. You're rewriting history. We did our best with 3 kids. Do you know how hard that was? Emily always needed structure. Matt needed extra help. You were the one who didn't need anything. Because I stopped asking, I said. Because every time I did, I got silence. Her face twisted, and for a moment I saw something raw. Not guilt. Resentment. I see what this is, she said. You think because you made some money, you get to rewrite the past. You want us to grovel? Beg. No, I said quietly. I want honesty. My dad sat back down, suddenly looking very tired. My mom stayed standing, arms crossed. We didn't come here to fight, she said. We came because we miss our son. That would have meant something if it wasn't for what came next. Because just then, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, glanced at the screen, and froze. It was a bank alert. A $5,000 withdrawal was attempted from your secondary account. My blood ran cold. That account wasn't public. It was linked to my old bank, the one I'd used back when I first started working. The only people who had access to that number were Matt. My voice was ice. Did you give my account info to Matt? My mother blinked. What? Don't lie to me. He's trying to access my money. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said too quickly, It's just a misunderstanding. Is it? I asked, walking around the island toward them. Because that account was frozen 6 months ago. I only kept it open because it's connected to some recurring payments. The only way he could have even found the number is if someone gave it to him. My dad looked alarmed now. We didn't know he was going to try anything. So you did give it to him. Silence. That was it. The moment. The snap. The part of me that still hoped for redemption, for healing, for some miracle of reconciliation. It died right there. Quietly. Like a light going out. You didn't come here to see me, I said. You came because Matt told you I bought this house. Because he saw me on that Forbes list. Because you thought maybe, if you played the part, you'd get a cut. My mom's mouth opened and closed. She was grasping for a response. We're family, she said weakly. No, I said. We're not. And then I walked to the front door, opened it, and said, you need to leave. Her voice cracked. Jonah, don't do this. Now. My dad stood slowly, glancing at her like he wasn't sure whether to back her up or just walk out. And then my mom said something I will never forget. You owe us, she snapped. After everything we did for you, you owe us. I didn't blink. You're right, I said. I do owe someone. And I turned to the dining table. Layla, I said, can you bring the file? She nodded, rising with calm precision. She picked up the thick folder and walked it over. My mother's eyes narrowed. What's that? I handed the folder to her. Proof. Of everything. Every payment you never made. Every scholarship I earned. Every voicemail I left. Every time I reached out. She opened it and paled. And that's when I said it, softly. I've been waiting 10 years for this moment. I wasn't always this calm. It might look like I had it together when I told them to leave. Like I was this perfectly composed, successful man who'd built an empire and now stood tall while the past tried to claw its way back in. But the truth is, it took years to become that person. There was a time, not so long ago, when I was anything but composed. I still remember my first year out of college like a bad fever dream. You know that post-graduation euphoria everyone talks about? The freedom, the excitement, the possibilities? Yeah, I never felt any of that. I graduated with honors, sure. But my bank account was gasping for air, and the only thing waiting for me when I crossed that stage was a backpack full of student debt and a 1,000-yard stare. I didn't get hired right away. I wasn't some prodigy who got swept up by a startup or flown to Silicon Valley the second I turned in my thesis. No, I spent 6 months living in a shared apartment with 3 other guys, one of whom regularly cooked raw meat in the microwave and left used Q-tips on the counter. I applied to over 100 jobs. No exaggeration. Entry-level roles that required 5 years of experience. Internships that paid in exposure. Remote positions with companies I later found out didn't even exist. My fridge was always empty. I lived off instant noodles, dollar store canned chili, and free samples from the grocery store on weekends. I used to linger by the Costco demo stations, pretending to be interested in air fryers just to sneak extra bites of microwave chicken nuggets. My laptop was 5 years old and held together with duct tape and hope. And every night, after refreshing my email for the 100th time, I'd crawl into bed and wonder if maybe my parents had been right about me all along. That maybe I wasn't good enough. That maybe they hadn't chosen Emily and Matt over me. Maybe they just picked the ones who were easier to love. I spiraled quietly. No drugs, no crime. Just exhaustion, depression, silence. I didn't talk to anyone from college. Most of my friends had scattered across the country, and the ones who stayed behind were climbing ladders I couldn't even see. I'd scroll through their posts, new apartments, shiny work badges, dinners at rooftop restaurants, and then look around my room at the cracked walls and duct-taped window blinds and think, how the hell did I get left behind again? There was one night, I don't talk about this often, where I sat in my dark apartment, staring at my phone, my thumb hovering over my mom's number. I hadn't called her in months. I told myself I was over it, that I didn't need them. But that night, I just wanted to hear her voice. Even if it was cold, even if it was dismissive, I just wanted to feel something familiar. I called. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I think that was the last time I tried. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's quieter than people think. There's no dramatic montage, no swelling music. Just long stretches of empty time. And in that silence, you have 2 choices, give up or get up. I chose the second. Barely. It started with a rejection email that wasn't quite a rejection. It was from a small tech company I'd applied to for a back-end developer role. The email said I didn't get the position, but they liked my portfolio and wanted to know if I'd be open to freelance work on smaller projects. It paid almost nothing, like barely more than fast food money, but I said yes. That job led to another, and then another. I started piecing together gigs like a digital scavenger hunt, writing scripts, fixing broken websites, building databases for companies that had no idea what they were doing. I worked 14-hour days, sometimes more. I taught myself frameworks on YouTube at 3 a.m. I broke down in the shower at least once a week. But slowly, painfully slowly, things started to shift. A few months in, one of my freelance clients introduced me to someone who ran a startup in Boston. They needed help optimizing their internal infrastructure. It was messy. Half their code was held together with copy-pasted Stack Overflow answers. But I cleaned it up. Fast. And they were impressed. They offered me a contract. Full-time, remote. It wasn't glamorous. The pay was okay, the hours were rough, and the team was disorganized. But it was a start. And I took it. That job taught me everything I needed to know, not just about coding, but about business. I watched how they managed people, how they handled clients, how they scaled. And I started to realize something. A lot of companies had no idea how to manage infrastructure when they started growing. They were good at launching flashy apps or attracting seed money. But once things got real, once their user base doubled or their data started flooding in, they crumbled. That's when the idea for my own business was born. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't even sexy, but it was necessary. I started offering back-end automation and infrastructure scaling as a service, first to small startups, then to bigger ones. I called it Apex Grid. It was just me at first, working from my cramped bedroom, sending cold emails, and hoping someone would bite. They did. And then another. And then 5 more. Within a year, I'd made more money than I ever thought possible. Not millions. Not yet. But enough to finally move out of that horrible apartment. Enough to pay off a chunk of my student loans. Enough to look in the mirror and not hate the person staring back. I hired a friend from college, one of the few who hadn't forgotten me. Then another developer. Then a project manager. We went from 3 people to 10. Then 20. I stopped doing the coding myself and started managing the vision. I started saying no to bad clients and yes to the ones who saw what we could really do. And then I met Layla. She was consulting for a health tech company that had just signed with us. I was sitting in on a meeting, half asleep from 2 all-nighters, when she called out a flaw in their workflow model that I hadn't even noticed. She wasn't loud about it, just right. Sharp, composed, insightful. She didn't try to impress anyone. She just was impressive. We started working together more. Late nights turned into long talks. Business turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend hikes, and eventually, a quiet Sunday afternoon where I realized I couldn't imagine a future without her in it. She didn't care about my past. She never asked about my family unless I brought it up. She wasn't trying to fix me. She just stood beside me, steady and certain, like an anchor in a storm. When I told her about my parents, really told her, all of it, she didn't say you should forgive them, or maybe they'll change. She just listened. Then she said, you didn't deserve any of that, and you don't owe them anything. That was the moment I knew she got it. We moved in together 2 years later. Bought the house a year after that. 6 bedrooms, quiet neighborhood, ridiculous smart fridge that texts me when we're out of oat milk. Layla wanted a vegetable garden. I wanted a home theater. We got both. And through it all, my family stayed quiet. Until they didn't. Until the gate camera lit up. Until my mother smiled like nothing had ever happened. Until they sat on my couch and told me I owed them. And the thing is, if they had come back when I was still climbing, still unsure of myself, still wondering if maybe I was the problem, I might have let them in. I might have tried to fix things. I might have given them what they wanted, just for the scraps of love I used to beg for as a kid. But they came back to someone else. Someone who didn't need them anymore. Someone who knew what it felt like to be alone, to be broken, and to rebuild from the ground up. They came back to a man who no longer chased approval. They came back to a man who had nothing left to prove. But that didn't mean I was done with them. Not yet. Because if they thought walking back into my life was going to be easy, they were about to learn just how much things had changed. Because the boy they abandoned was gone. And the man who replaced him? He had a plan. The moment they walked out of my house that day, my mother fuming, my father stone-faced, and not a single apology between them, I felt something I hadn't in years. Clarity. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Just a sharp, undeniable knowing. Like I had finally stopped pretending the past could be fixed with a few tears and a lukewarm, "We're proud of you now." I stood in the doorway long after they were gone, watching the gate close behind them, watching the gravel settle where their tires had crushed it. My hands were steady. My heart was calm. They had come for a piece of what I built. And now, for the first time, I had the power to decide how that story would end. I turned to Layla, who was already packing away the folder we had kept prepared for over a year. You were right, I said. They were never going to come back for me. Only for what I became. She nodded. I'm sorry it went the way it did. I looked down at the table. At the tea she never finished. At the faint trace of fingerprints on the folder. I'm not. Because now, I could see the path forward. This wasn't about closure anymore. This was about accountability. And I had just begun the setup. The next day, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 6 years, Travis Chun. Back in college, Travis had been the guy who could fix anything, networks, databases, friendships, you name it. He was a wizard with code, sure, but what made him truly brilliant was his nose for leverage. He didn't just build programs, he built systems. Quiet ones, invisible ones, the kind that tracked patterns, traced digital footprints, and sorted noise from signal. Travis now ran a private security consultancy, digital and legal. He had contracts with firms, law offices, even a few government agencies that couldn't afford to get their hands dirty. Jonah, he answered after 3 rings. Well, damn. I thought you fell off the grid or became a monk or something. I might have, I said, but something just dragged me back. Ominous. I like it. I need help. There was a pause, and I could already hear the gears turning. Family. Yeah. You want them gone or embarrassed? Neither. I want them seen for who they really are, and I want it documented. Another pause. Then, you got anything to start with? I sent him everything. The bank notification, the account access logs, the metadata from the attempted withdrawal, the screenshots I had of Matt's old texts, particularly the one where he drunkenly bragged to a friend that Jonah's probably loaded now. Dude's company was in Wired or some crap. I bet I could sweet-talk Mom into calling him. I still had the copy. I had a lot of copies. Travis whistled after reading it. Wow, that's impressively scummy. Can you find out how deep this goes? Already on it, he said. I'll get back to you in 2 days. Maybe 3 if they're sloppy. Spoiler alert, they were very sloppy. In the meantime, I started building a paper trail. Every memory I had, the favoritism, the lies, the times I was used and discarded, I started turning into files, notes, even timelines. It wasn't about being petty. It was about clarity. Because when you grow up gaslit for so long, your own memories start to feel like fiction. And I was done doubting mine. I wrote it all down. The time Emily borrowed my scholarship money for her rent and never paid it back. The time Matt totaled my car at 17 and my parents blamed me for not locking the keys. The time I got food poisoning at a family dinner and they accused me of being too sensitive to Mom's cooking. Each page was a piece of the puzzle. And when it was done, I printed the whole thing out and locked it in the home safe. I wasn't done yet. I reached out to Alicia, a mutual friend from high school who now worked as a regional journalist. She'd once told me, half joking, if you ever want to go public with your family drama, hit me up. At the time, I laughed. Now, hey Alicia, I texted. Still looking for a story? Her reply came within minutes. Always. What do you have? Ever heard of a golden child and scapegoat family structure? Jonah, she replied. You have no idea how many clicks that gets. I told her I'd get her something soon. For now, it was just a maybe, a possible option. But I was keeping that door open. 2 days later, Travis called. Got something juicy for you. Go on. So, I dug into your old bank account. Turns out, Matt made multiple attempts to access it, not just the one you saw. Someone's been trying to slowly guess security questions. I tracked the IP back to your parents' house. Unbelievable, I muttered. Oh, it gets better, he said. I also found that your mother's been emailing a few of your old clients. My chest tightened. What? Yeah. Weird messages too. Stuff like, just wanted to reconnect on behalf of Jonah, and we were involved in the early days of Apex Grid. Trying to lay claim to your work history, I guess. I sat down slowly. You're telling me she's posing as a co-founder? In not so many words, but yeah, it's clumsy. She used her real name and Gmail address, so they probably just ignored her. But still, I stared out the window, jaw clenched. The audacity, the nerve. They had the gall to ghost me for 10 years and now try to weave themselves back into the story like they'd been behind the scenes all along. They really think this is just a game, I said. Don't worry, Travis replied. I've got everything archived. You want a copy? Absolutely. Oh, and one more thing, he added casually. You know that house they live in now? Yeah. Your dad's company went under 5 years ago. Filed bankruptcy. The house is in your uncle's name. They're technically squatting. I let that sink in. Of course. That explained the desperation. The sudden visit. The smiles. The suitcases. They weren't just reconnecting. They were circling a new meal ticket. That weekend, Layla and I sat on the back porch with 2 mugs of coffee and a plan spread out between us. We weren't just going to block them. We weren't going to disappear again. We were going to expose them. Strategically. Safely. Permanently. I want to do this clean, I said. No outbursts. No public drama. Just truth. Quiet and undeniable. Layla nodded. We hit them where they can't argue. Facts. Records. Receipts. So we prepared. I drafted a statement. One that outlined my side of the story. Not petty. Not vindictive. Just facts. A timeline of events. Quotes. Dates. Emails. Financial records. Everything backed up and verifiable. I wasn't going to post it yet, but it was ready. We set up a private link with a password. We uploaded the file to a clean, minimal website. We added tracking pixels to know when it was opened. And then we waited. Because I knew, eventually, they would come back. They always did. The opportunity came faster than expected. 3 weeks after the visit, I got an invitation to Emily's wedding. Yes, Emily. She was getting married to a guy named Brent, some local entrepreneur who ran a chain of fitness studios. The invitation was printed in gold foil with some cheesy quote about family and new beginnings. Tucked into the envelope was a handwritten note from my mother. Jonah, we hope this can be a fresh start. Your sister would love to have you there, and we hope to finally heal as a family. Love, Mom. Layla held the note between her fingers like it might burn her. You think she actually wrote this? Or dictated it to Emily? I didn't answer. I was staring at the RSVP card. They left a line for a number of guests. They left a box for dietary restrictions. They even left a little heart next to, will you be attending the rehearsal dinner? But there was no checkbox for, will you bring the storm that finally shatters this fake little family image you've built? Layla leaned over my shoulder. Are we going? I smiled for the first time in days. Oh, I said, we're going. But not as guests. As truth. Dressed in a tux and a black dress. Holding hands under fairy lights. Smiling while the past finally caught up to them. And everyone they were trying to impress. Because they had spent years pretending I didn't exist. Now, they were going to wish I still didn't. The wedding was held on a Sunday afternoon, in a rented vineyard about 30 minutes outside the town where I grew up. It was a Pinterest dream. Rows of white chairs under string lights, a flower-draped altar facing a perfect view of rolling green hills, pastel bridesmaid dresses that looked airbrushed onto a magazine spread. Brent, the groom, wore a white tux jacket and a too-wide smile like he'd just closed a stock deal instead of preparing to marry into the most toxic family I'd ever known. When Layla and I arrived, dressed sharp, polite smiles in place, we were immediately noticed. Heads turned. Some people whispered. A few squinted like they were trying to place me. I hadn't been back to this side of town in over a decade. I was the prodigal son, except no one had bothered to kill a fatted calf. We didn't sit in the family section. We sat near the back, just far enough to avoid conversation, but close enough to watch every single reaction. I wasn't here to toast or dance or play nice. I was here to end the narrative they'd been trying to write without me. Emily never once looked in my direction as she walked down the aisle. My parents, seated in the front row like they were royalty, didn't acknowledge me either. But I wasn't expecting them to. They weren't my audience. The reception was when the real show began. Everything was timed. Layla and I had gone over it a dozen times. I knew the schedule by heart. Grand entrance, toasts, dinner, first dance, then the open mic portion where people could say a few words about the happy couple. That was my moment. Not to cause a scene, but to let the truth speak. I didn't go up when the DJ first called for guests to grab the mic. Instead, I waited. I watched as Emily's friends talked about how inspiring her drive was. How she overcame so many obstacles. How she never let anyone stand in her way. I sipped my champagne and counted the seconds. Then Layla gave me the nod. It was time. I stood, adjusted my jacket, and made my way toward the microphone like I belonged there. A few guests looked confused, some even curious. I could feel my parents' eyes on me before I even spoke. "Hi," I said, calm, measured. "I'm Jonah, Emily's brother." A pause. Some whispering. Emily's jaw visibly tightened. "I haven't been part of this family for a long time," I continued. "So I thought, since we're all gathered here, I'd take a moment to reintroduce myself." The room had gone still. "My name is Jonah Carter. I'm the founder of Apex Grid. Some of you might have heard of it. We optimize digital infrastructure for enterprise clients. Forbes did a write-up a few years back. You know this self-made story." A murmur rolled through the room. Brent shifted uncomfortably beside Emily. "And I say self-made because that's what I had to be. When I was 18, I left home with 2 duffel bags and a scholarship. No support. No safety net. While my sister got a car for graduation, I got blamed when mine was totaled. While my brother had his legal bills covered, I was working night shifts to afford textbooks." I paused, letting that sink in. I reached out for years. Called. Wrote. Sent cards. I got nothing. And now, after building something out of the silence, my parents showed up at my house 3 weeks ago. Told me they were proud. Said they missed me. Asked to reconnect. I looked directly at my mother. She said, "We always knew you'd make it big." My voice never rose. I didn't need theatrics. Just truth. And the very next day, someone attempted to steal $5,000 from one of my old bank accounts. There were gasps now. Layla stepped forward from the back of the room and handed me a remote. I clicked the button. Behind me, the projector screen meant for wedding slides lit up, not with pictures, but with a timeline. Emails, voicemails, texts from Matt bragging about manipulating our parents into contacting me. Screenshots of my mother emailing my clients, trying to imply she had helped build my company. The room was silent, save for the slow clicking as I moved through each slide. "And before you think this is just a bitter sibling lashing out," I said, "I want to make something clear. I'm not here to ruin a wedding. I'm here because this family has built its reputation on falsehood, on pretending to be whole, on cutting out the ones who didn't fit their script." Emily stood up suddenly. "Turn it off. Right now." Her voice cracked. I ignored her. I've spent a long time healing. Quietly. I didn't ask for revenge. I asked for peace. And I was denied that. Again and again. Then I clicked to the final slide. It was a quote. From my mother. Written in her own handwriting on the back of the wedding invitation. "You owe us." And below it, my response. "No, I don't." I stepped down. I handed the mic back to the DJ, who looked like he wanted to disappear into his soundboard. People were stunned. Some guests stood. Others whispered furiously. Brent's parents looked mortified. One of Emily's bridesmaids grabbed her arm and tried to lead her away, but Emily was frozen. My parents? My mom looked pale, lips parted like she wanted to scream, but couldn't. My dad sat completely still, like someone had just pulled the rug out from under his entire sense of control. I didn't stay to watch the rest. I walked out, Layla beside me, hand in mine. We didn't say a word until we were in the car, engine humming. Then she turned to me and said, "You didn't just burn the bridge. You built a new one, and made sure they couldn't cross it." I looked out the window at the vineyard disappearing in the rearview mirror. "I'm done carrying their weight," I said. "They can drown in their own story now." The fallout was immediate. Travis told me the link we had created, the one containing the timeline, screenshots, bank attempts, and client emails, was opened nearly 50 times in the next 24 hours. By guests, by vendors, by Brent's legal team. Apparently, Brent's family was a bit more concerned with reputation than my sister realized. I heard through Alicia, the journalist friend I'd tipped off, that the wedding never made it past the cake. Brent confronted Emily during the toasts. There was yelling. Someone threw a drink. By Monday, their marriage license had been revoked. The story hit local news a week later. It was framed as a viral speech exposing family betrayal, with some quotes pulled from my statement. Alicia had done her job with care. She kept my company name in, but blurred out identifying addresses. It wasn't a revenge piece. It was a case study on boundaries, healing, and what happens when you try to rewrite someone out of their own life. I never responded to the emails that came afterward. Not the one from my mother. 2 sentences, full of blame and dripping with wounded ego. Not the one from Emily, accusing me of ruining her only shot at happiness. Not the one from Matt, who just sent a single line. "You really think you're better than us now?" To which I didn't reply. I didn't need to. They already knew the answer. Months passed. Layla and I got married in a small ceremony by the coast. No vineyards. No slideshows. Just the people who had shown up for us without needing a reason. Travis was there. Alicia too. We toasted under open skies, barefoot in the sand, with laughter that didn't need to be loud to feel full. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I stood with Layla, her head on my shoulder, and I felt it. Not revenge. Not triumph. But peace. The kind that comes not from forgetting where you came from, but from refusing to let it define you. The kind that says, this is where the story ends. And I get to write the last line. You owe us, she said. And I smiled, finally free, and said, no, I never did.